tips that can help you speed up your workflow, tips that can help you increase your quality as well. I studied photography in year 12 and 13 in school, and there was so many things I learned there, but also I didn't learn there. And I feel like if I could go back and tell myself all these things, I would want to. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Christina here. I bet you're wondering from the title of this video, why is Christina suddenly talking about photography? If you did not already know, I am actually a photographer and I have been taking photos for the last decade and working as a photographer for the last 2 or 3 years. And currently I am working towards setting up my own business. So because I've had quite a lot of experience and have learned a lot of things along the way, I want to share with you guys about the things that I wish I'd known earlier on in my journey. Tips that can help you speed up your workflow, tips that can help you increase your quality as well, and I just want to share these with you today. Number one is so important. Shoot in RAW. So shooting in RAW is really important because it's a raw image format and it basically stores more of the data of the photo than if you shoot in JPEG. And this is really important when you then go into editing later on, because if it's really dark or it's really light, you can actually edit it a lot better because it's just got so much more quality that you can work with when you edit the photos. And shooting in JPEG, it's pretty much a set image, right? And so, you know, later on, if you want to edit just a JPEG image, which is like something that's already readable on all devices, it's not going to be as easy because you're going to try and turn down the exposure on the sky and it's like super overexposed and you can't do anything about it. So when you shoot in RAW, it still has some of the data, some of the detail, let's say, of your overexposed sky. And like, I'm not saying this happens with every image, it really depends how you expose your photos in the first place, but shooting in RAW really helps also if it's like a super dark image and you can bring up the exposure and then you still have all the detail and it doesn't look completely botched. Shooting in RAW was something that I only experienced when I started my apprenticeship, and it was a game changer for me. I was like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. Like, you can really just do so much more with the editing if you shoot in RAW. Obviously, you have to also have a program like Photoshop or Lightroom that can actually read your RAW images, or Capture One if you're not an Adobe fan, that can actually read your images, but it's just so much better. As a professional photographer, you really should be shooting in RAW. The second thing is to actually use Adobe Bridge to select and cull your images, to go through your images and to just speed up the culling process. So I remember opening Photoshop in school and just seeing like something next to it like File, Open in Bridge, and I was like, what is Bridge? What is Bridge? Nobody ever told me what Bridge was. I had no idea what it was, and I was like, okay, it's gonna stay a mystery, and it stayed a mystery until a long time later. Basically, Bridge is a program that you can get if you have an Adobe Creative Cloud account. You can download it for free, I believe. And it's basically just this program. I can insert a screenshot here and you can quickly go through all your images. You can select them by putting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 stars, which you can also rate in your camera. Usually if you have a good camera, you can also rate your images in your camera while you're shooting, which is also something that you should do. And then you can see the rated images, or you can rate more images, and it speeds up the whole process because you can basically then just copy the selected images that you want into Lightroom and into Photoshop or wherever you edit, instead of importing 1,658 images onto Lightroom, which obviously is just going to take a lot longer. And if you full well know that there are some in there where half of the people have their eyes closed, etc., then you can just go through your rated images and then drag them from Bridge onto your desktop or into a folder or onto your hard drive or into Lightroom and or Photoshop. So that was something that I did not know for a very long time. Number 3, don't delete the photos in your camera while you're shooting. Now, this is something I used to do a lot. And every time I did it, I accidentally deleted something that I didn't want to delete and I regretted it and I was like, flip, that would have been the shot that I wanted. That would have been one of the best shots, right? Or if you then have, there's been so many examples that I've seen on TikTok and on Reels as well, where someone has taken a photo and it's really zoomed out and it's really not great quality and and it's too dark, etc. So it would be something they perhaps would delete on their camera. But then if you zoom in on Photoshop later on and you see, oh, there's a wonderful moment, let's just get like, for example, there was like a couple, right? And it was really far out and they were like, he had his arms on her, like on her waist. And then in the original image, everything was just off. But then in the edited image, they cropped just the hands and they had this beautiful close-up image of these hands that they might have deleted, right? So just don't delete your shots. Just don't delete anything from the camera until you've imported all of your photos, because then obviously, like I said, you can go into Bridge, you can then select with 5 stars or with 0 stars or whatever. I think I would still recommend importing all of your photos somewhere, which is something that you can do in Lightroom. It just creates a catalog with all of your photos or all of the ones that you think you could potentially use. You never know what could actually look really good. So don't delete any shots on your camera unless you're 100% sure, unless it's literally a photo of the floor that you accidentally took. Don't delete any photos, or just don't delete any. Like keep the accidental photos. You never know. Those also might be the funny ones that you end up using and that your clients really enjoy. Number 4. Oh my gosh. This also was something that I learned way too late, was Photoshop layers and masks. Now, working in layers and masks is basically non-destructive editing. Instead of like when you open an image in Photoshop and you don't create a second layer or like a duplicate of the layer, you're literally working on the original image, and you have to be careful because then if you do 1,000 clicks, at some point, you can't go back all the way. Whereas if you do layers, if you create a second layer, a duplicate of your image in a second layer, you're basically working on a copy of that. And if you say, oh, flip, no, I really hate this edit, I'm going to change it, I'm going to go back, I did too much retouching, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, then you can always delete that layer and go back to your original image, which is so much better than then being like, shoot, you know, I have to start completely all over again. So always create new layers for each thing you want to do as well. That's something that I really like doing, is like creating a layer for skin editing, a layer for the eyes, a layer for the hair, a layer for, or like if you're, I don't know, if you're editing something that's not people, like a layer for the sky, a layer for the grass, a layer for whatever, the mountains. So like depending on what you're editing, depending on what you're color grading, depending on what you are focusing on at that moment, it doesn't, if you end up disliking it and wanting to start again, then you don't have to ruin the whole image and you don't have to start completely from scratch. And then we also have the masks, which is also something that I did not learn until my apprenticeship. I've had Photoshop for so long, but I just didn't know how to do it. And so masks are like, that's how you create Photoshop magic, is with a mask, because you can select something. I'm going to show an example here or there or everywhere. You can select something, like let's say I want to get rid of this background. So I would select with the Magic Wand tool, I would select my face and my hair, and it would be a rough outline. It would be a rough outline of my face and my hair. And then you click onto select and mask. It was funny, I just had to think about it and I only had the word in German in my head because I did my whole apprenticeship and I do my job in German and Photoshop is in German. So you select and mask, then this new window comes up and it's a masking window. You can really go in the tiny, tiny, tiny details. If you have a pen as well, like a tablet, a drawing tablet, then you can also use the pen to like really get the details, like get each hair, you know, if you really need to do that. And then you go out of that again, and then it's got this fine selection in the Magic Wand tool. And then you can click mask, create mask. And then basically you can always go back. If you then see, oh shoot, I missed one hair, or there's a bit of backdrop that's going over my face or something, right? Whatever it is, then you can always go back. You can always use the brush, white or black. There's only whites and blacks in the masks. And you can basically just use the brush to go back and forth and be like, okay, I do want to remove this. Actually, no, I don't want to remove this. I do want to remove this. And then if you completely change your mind and you're like, actually, I don't even want to replace the backdrop anymore, then you can just delete the layer mask. And it's all wonderful and everything's back where it was. And it's all there. Anyway, I hope I explained that well, but layer masks and layers in general have been a life changer for me as well. Okay, number 5, get more batteries. As a photographer, I have had my days where my battery was half charged and then I needed to do something or take some photos and then I had to wait for it to charge and I only had one battery and then I was pretty much screwed because the battery was dead. Now, I think we all know that feeling of a battery being dead and being like, shoot, I need this right now and I don't have it. Especially if you're shooting events or you're the only person shooting at an event. If you're a wedding photographer, for example, it's so important to get at least 2 replacement batteries that you can keep changing and charging. And the best thing is also, which I haven't personally bought yet, is a battery charger pack for the bottom of the camera. So you're walking around with 3 batteries already in your camera and they basically are ready to be used. So that's something I need to invest in, but it is something that's really important to have multiple batteries because you can't rely on one battery, especially if you're like shooting, I don't know, like all day and then you've got like 2,000 images. Your camera is going to go on overload if you don't have enough batteries, and then who knows, you might end up missing the most important part of the event or something. So that's really important. So number 6, you actually can use Lightroom to edit your photos, and if you use I don't want to say filter, if you use a preset, if it's your own one or if it's a bought one, you can bulk apply it to your images if you know that this is the color style that we want on all of the images that I'm going to import. When you open Lightroom and have an import import menu option thing, then you can actually hit the apply on import button and then you can choose a preset. So if you want to apply a preset to all the photos you've just taken, and then you have to tweak them afterwards, obviously, but it does help. You can apply, ooh, the sun's coming out, it's really bright. You can apply that to all your images at once instead of having to go through every single photo and applying it yourself. Number 7. This is something that I only learned recently, actually, in editing and in color grading. Less is more. So I've seen my fair share of edits and photo filters and presets and stuff where it's overexposed or it's underexposed or it's like the curves and the contrasts are way too much. To be honest, like everyone has their editing style and that's fine. But I've realized that actually less is more, right? So when you're editing an image, don't whack up the sharpness all the way. See if you can just edit, like just really tell the difference between like changing it from 1 stop to 2 stops to 3 stops instead of going up 20 stops. In editing, less is more, and the images don't always need editing. What makes you a good photographer is if the images really don't need that much editing. Obviously, we all have our exceptions, like if I want to retouch someone's face or whatever, or change the backdrop, totally fine. You can do what you want in photography, that's the thing. There's no set rule in that sense, it's art, right? So there's no rule in art either. But I think at the same time, we really don't need to edit our photos as much as we think. And I think social media is like telling us that everything needs to be edited. And it's funny because then it's also like, I've seen photographers where people ask like, oh, what preset did you use? And then they're like, this is my color grading. I did this. I did not just whack a filter on it and change the exposure, but actually I did it. And the thing is I think some of the most beautiful images are the ones where they didn't really edit much and they actually just took good photos. So those are the golden 7 things that I have learned over the last 10 years. Some may have been obvious to you, some may have not been obvious to you. I'm sure there are many things that I left out. Those aren't the 7 golden rules of photography or anything. These are just things that I know that I really appreciated when I knew them. And I wish I could go back to my 16-year-old self and tell myself to shoot in RAW and tell myself to use Bridge and tell myself to use layers and masks and get extra batteries. So all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that you learned something from this. I hope that I explained it well. I am going to do more of these videos, so please just let me know what you want to know about photography. Go and follow my Instagram, Christina Watkins Photos. I post all my photography stuff on there. Hope you have a good rest of your day and go out and take some great photos today. All right, peace out. Bye.